Hello and welcome to IMP's WWE Adventures podcast on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. Help the network by leaving a 5-star review, give a donation directly through Red Circle, and become one of the amazing community by joining the Social Suplex Discord. A link is in the description. Order merch from all our shows over at chopped-tees.com. Thank you to Dickie. Listen to the other top-notch shows here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. One Nation Radio, Keeping It Strong Style, All Things Elite, Wrestling Art with Chris Things, Trish and Sarah, Tunnel Talk, and Sam Brown's AEW Match Guide. My name is Matt Maher, aka Imp, and this is your quick look back at the WWE week that was. 30 minutes. Nay, this is a longer one. A special WWE show over on Netflix. The Elimination Chamber. John Cena turns heel. All of that big stuff. This is a big one. It is the big one. Cody got to say a swear word, and The Rock got his big angle to go into WrestleMania with. A week that really directed us into what is happening at WrestleMania. Pretty big week. It does. There's a few other things just to really get off. So I had been holding off. I will say so something that had been pointed out during within Social Suplex, especially as the month went on. It was becoming clear for all of February, for the first time since I've been a fan, WWE did not mention Black History Month once. And I want to point that out before we go into any form of review. This is the big Elimination Chamber special. I feel like it would be disingenuous just to be all excited about WrestleMania and all hypey hype when the absolutely astounding 500-day plus statistics in terms of any form of a black singles star having a singles match on any form of WWE special, over 500 days. The questions were asked all the way back at Hell in the Cell in October, September, and here we are, this show right before WrestleMania, and the statistic is kept on going. We're over 500 days now. But also, the month is over, and to just move on into March, it's all happy clappy going to WrestleMania, without pointing out that this is the first time since I've been a fan, and I've been a fan since 2005, 2006, the first time they've not done any form of video package or anything. Nada, nothing, not a mention, for the first time ever. I'm calling it out. I'm not just going to let that slide. that's just I can immediately read into that. It's like, oh, wait, the company where Triple H was sat right behind Linda McMahon as she's sworn in and she's talking about punishing teachers who teach black history. Read into that what you will. I'm just going to... This facts that have literally happened. Then on WWE TV, there is no mention of Black History Month. I'm going to put that front and centre. And quite literally, the only thing they've got to combat it, other than the bad excuse that Keenan Thompson didn't get away with when SNL said, oh, there's no one really rising to the crop. Especially in WWE, where you control everything. So, there's no real stars kind of grabbing that brass ring. Then write them to grab a brass ring. That's literally a complete bullshit excuse in WWE. It doesn't excuse you from anything. And just look at AEW, the amount of momentum they've been able to just build for Ricochet, the star that is Swerve Strickland, and the fact that Bobby Lashley had lost all momentum in WWE, and as soon as he arrives in AEW, they're once again a huge star. This is nothing to do with brass ring grabbing, this is all to do with you not booking them, not writing them, and it's still happening, and it's continuing to happen. Who's going to break this? Apart from Bianca Belair, is there anybody who's going to be breaking through into this? They've got the talent to do it. Melo could be getting some form of momentum push. Trick could be brought up and given something. It takes time to build it up, but they're not even having that. Melo's tag teaming with The Miz. There is no end to this streak in sight. Front and centre, before I get into it, there's no mention of Black History Month. There's no building of black stars. And all I can read into it is because you don't want to. The talent is there. And AEW kind of proved it by taking your black talent and making them stars. Making them big deals. So it's fair to say, quite a big marker on WWE is that they seem to be leaning a certain way, which for me is a huge, huge negative. You choose who to build up, you choose who to make a star. You saying that there's no talent of these colours grabbing those brass rings is absolute bullshit. But it's been over 500 plus days at this point, and then you don't mention Black History Month. And I have to ask the question, why? Why was this the year you decided not to? And if I was somebody in a presser, I'd ask them that. That would be my question. Why didn't you do it this year? Why was this a year you chose not to? And a bullshit answer is a bullshit answer. If he gives a crap answer, then that's crap PR for them. I felt like I couldn't start the show without mentioning that huge, for me, what is quite a big deal. There hasn't been any pushback on it, and which I will say, it for me would be expected. I'm not expecting to see pushback on it or anything like this, but I wanted to talk about it. I felt like I couldn't just talk about Elimination Chamber and all the big stuff of WrestleMania without bigging up this, for me, huge thing first. Also, I'm European, and I think that's a huge part of this show as well. So, it's Elimination Chamber from Toronto, Canada, and I'm not going to lie, when I watched this show, I wanted absolutely nothing to do with anything America. Then, at the start of this show, they've got Pat doing his little rant about Canada after booing the US anthem, quotes were immediately brought up of Paul Levesque in a different thing saying, oh, we don't do any politics on WWE TV. Any viewer immediately could tell that was bullshit, but it's a line that he said. Then they do this. They play the US national anthem so that it gets booed, so that Pat can have this rant, and then Pat's the one who gets the ire from the internet for doing this, for like playing it off almost like in a big banter type of way. It's kind of the way that Pat addressed it, and immediately just like, that wasn't banter, pal. Like, Jon Stewart did his thing afterwards as well, where he was talking about Trump turning heel on Zelensky, which felt so weird to have such a serious thing be talked about with wrestling terminology. Was like, it was a very strange combination of the different worlds. But yeah, so to have play the US anthem so it would get booed, so that Pat could have his rant, and you say that, oh, we don't do politics on our shows. Bullshit. And then you had the transphobe coming out with his American flag to again get the political ire from the crowd. That's twice within the same show. You had big political moments, purposely leaning into stuff to get a reaction. And to see that leaned into on the WWE show, when I was watching it, because this was the day after like the big blow up between Trump and Zelensky. So I didn't even really want to watch Elimination Chamber. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm covering it. I'll make my notes. My loophole being it was in Canada. But WWE found a way to do American politics within the Canadian show. And not just through like narrative story type of stuff. Let's not get like too niche on American individualism versus European kind of grouping together society stuff. Let's not within narratives and things. Let's not get too nerdy about that. So anyway, let's jump on over to I guess the biggest part of the show, because I didn't actually realise just how much like negativity I had to blast through first. I'm not even going to mention really the production stuff that I still dislike. It's got the same problem with the rhythms, the same waiting about, time wasting stuff. Don't watch these shows live if possible, because you will have a good time actually if you watch it and skip through the bullshit and you just kind of get to it really quickly. That's 3 shits in the first. We're swearing a bit too much too early on. I've got a whole thing to get through. So let's jump on over to Cody's soul. The Rock and Cody Rhodes. John Cena turning heel. How did this play out?
Hey, Rock! Go yourself!
So our main event angle was a promo. Cody's music hitting immediately after Cena's win. You know what, actually, we've got the men's chamber to talk about, because it's one fluid thing. So I was a bit concerned. I thought we were going to get the men's chamber, and when I saw it was the Rock especially, okay, so it's going to be the men's chamber, then there's going to be another huge gap, then we're going to do the whole Rock and Cody thing, and they're both going to get huge long entrances, and the men's chamber participants didn't walk out till 2:30 my time. I was like, okay, so they're not going to be finishing till gone 3. Then we've got to get through all the Rock bullshit. But it was as soon as the match ended, Cody came out. This is quite a nice, natural way to do it. Cody Rhodes is going to want to go face to face with his challenger. That makes sense. It gets Cody out there with John Cena. There doesn't have to be animosity from the get-go there. That's quite a natural, oh, you've won, let's do a little pose and get the crowd popping type of thing. In terms of the chamber itself, competitors, just to run through them, John Cena, CM Punk, Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre, Damian Priest and the transphobe. Drew and Seth started us off, the two still having their fire of animosity as Punk's pod saw a lot of action. There was a huge usage of people costing themselves by not being able to let things go. Drew was cost with his stuff, and that meant that Damian Priest was able to gain an advantage there, possibly sending them into their match, just with Drew seeming a little bit of a dum-dum. I guess we saw the transphobe wanted to show off a bit more, a bit too much, and that's what ends up costing him. Seth Rollins as well, not able. He could have gone and pinned John Cena when he threw him into the pod, but nope, he could not let that off CM Punk go, and that's what ends up costing him. And then Punk and Cena just have a full-on, wind back the clock a little bit. Priest was the first lad out of his pod, allowed him to trade punches with Drew in their apparent WrestleMania match that hasn't really built. They've had Damian Priest eliminating from the Rumble and eliminating him here from the Chamber. It's not really been anything on TV. Then came the transphobe. Priest got some great reactions as slamming that guy's head into the pod as well. Got huge reactions. John Cena, man number 5, to a huge reaction and massive cheers after dropping each lad. 5-knuckle shuffle to the transphobe, attitude adjustment to boot. Claymore, quick roll up from Priest, and McIntyre was out of here. Claymore in anger, and that's both lads in their own story, swiftly eliminated 2 pay-per-views in a row. Priest has served his storyline purpose and then just been immediately written out. It happened in the Rumble as well. He got his elimination on McIntyre, then immediately, okay, you've done your bit, out you go. Same here at the Chamber. You have served your storyline purpose, out you go. The transphobe was the only one on his feet for Punk's eventual arrival. A huge cheer for this Chicago man, and the crowd was so amped to see Cena and Punk staring down. Seth the man to stall that. We did eventually get it in our final 2, but there were constant stallings and interruptions to stop us from getting the thing the crowd really wanted. Just so driven to be that guy that gets to beat up Punkerton. Seth arguing with Cena set up the transphobe to Buckshot on in, and Punk got his full circle countering the next Buckshot into a straight up slap to the face reversal. GTS and the misinformation spreader is out of here. Punk and Cena teaming together against Seth with a little heart attack, obviously huge pop we were in Canada, and now was the time for the actual stare down. Handshake? No. Hug! Oh, nice little hug, which is important for conditioning for later. For me, that's not a coincidence. This feels like this specific bit was on purpose. Oh, a hug. Okay, that's fine. I've seen hugs earlier. I know that wrestlers hug or whatever, which is important for how the turn happens later on. But you see it all the time where it's more like a nice coincidence happens. You got a lot of action happening. It's going to happen. The Canadians cheered for every single signature swing from the two older lads. GTS, nope. Shut the fuck instead. Yay! Anaconda Vice. Yay! This W crowd were just happy clappy for all the things as the two rolled back the clock. It's not an era of WWE that I'm a fan of or was good. Like CM Punk single-handedly held my investment in the company in that time. It was a bad time for WWE, and little did I know it was going to get worse. It was not a good time. Springboard caught by Cena into an attitude adjustment was kicked out of. And somehow Seth Rollins returned. Buckle bomb off the corner into the cage wall for Cena, then into the plexiglass. This is where he could have pinned him. He's got John Cena down. He could have done that, but no. Seth Rollins has to go over to CM Punk. There was some lad during all that in a Cena Sucks t-shirt who was so loudly just chanting, "Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Seth," like over and over and over and over and over and over. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Seth. Like, finding a pro Cena pocket was actually a reprieve. Like, normally, I'm not the biggest fan for doing some form of, like, sound meddling a bit too much where it's blatantly obvious I'm seeing stuff. However, that was very annoying. That was a very irritating thing. Like, mate, you can stop. You don't have to chant it consistently for the entire time that Cena's in the vicinity. Wrestling fans are a different breed. I would have max chanted it 2 or 3 times. But for the entire bit, he's still going. Like, Jesus Christ, mate. Yeah, mute him. Find me a pocket. It's all right. Sethy Boo too slippery a customer to GTS. Buckle Bomb and Stomp had Punk kicking out yet again. Mr. Chicago took all the punishment and John took a much needed nap. Cena finally back in to end Seth's time in tandem. GTS, AA, Cole went in hard about Seth's animosity towards Punk costing him, soaking in the occasion between the two. Handshake. No! GTS! Attitude adjustment, kick out, then a nice little nap. Punk crawled to the ropes. Stomp out of nowhere. Cena snapping in with the STF whilst telling his opponent, "I'm sorry," as he takes advantage of this situation, which again, and that's your next character note that's quite important. Cody Rhodes versus John Cena, the big match now set for Las Vegas, which takes us into Cody's music hitting immediately after the win. Our first confrontation between WrestleMania opponents, or as Cole put it, the leader of that generation versus the leader of this generation. Praise and a handshake. If you smell, Rocky out with Travis Scott, because friends. he doesn't go. He's here for the entire angle and possibly causes Cody a little injury. The Rock's glasses going from shade to prescription with this character now corporate. Slow walk and a stare holding microphones as they soak in the atmosphere and let it build. Cody Rhodes, the moment has arrived. The roaster's vest and tie black, but you can't trick me, Cody. That sort of thing. Normally with your reds or your blues or at least some form of colour, but this was all black and white. Like, you can't use your knowledge of costume design to trick me. It's not going to happen. And if you don't join me, the dream dies. Again. Cody wants it all. His soul no longer belongs to him because he gave his soul to the ring and those people a long time ago. Hey Rock, go fuck yourself. It's a huge, huge pop. Such a huge reaction. Cody going full Christian with the F-bomb. Because I know he's sort of like, well, how did you feel when Cody did that, did the F-bomb? How did it feel? First of all, yes, the fact that you don't use them means that when you do one, it has a huge, huge reaction. Not surprised to see that there were some people complaining that their kids' product had an F-bomb in it. So over here in the UK, I think you're allowed an F-bomb on a 12, so I don't think the rating would actually change over here in the UK. I think you're allowed one. It's all to do with context as well. Like, if you say, call someone a C word, then it's an automatic 18. But if you're like Billy Butcher and the boys like, hey, you say words, like that, then it's a 15, I think. Over here in the UK, context matters for how you're saying it. I don't know if it's the same with the F word, but I think you're allowed one. But I'm all for wrestling having occasional swears to get these huge reactions. In my head, immediately, I'm comparing it to the Christian one. I was like, oh, I love the Christian one. They're two very, very different contexts. Where this one just had that built-up animosity of what happened last year with that storyline, and Cody showing that he's sticking with the fans, he's going to fight against the power. But Christian's was a lot more personal. So it felt like the way that he does his promos, which really does feel like he's trying to personally go after his opponents, just get those reactions out of him. So when he said that to Edge as well, where there's so much history there, and just to show that Christian is like digging into his current character, he's not going to be just suddenly all happy clappy with Edge. I really like that. But maybe that gets a bigger response if there haven't been other more regular F-bombs and swears on AEW TV. Whilst in WWE there aren't any. So the fact that you got this, they haven't heard any since The Rock last year. There haven't been any Fs. Not any Fs since...
Your old or broken phone can let you down when you need it most.
Perfect.
But at Verizon, trade in any old phone from our top brands and get the most for it, up to $2,000 in value. For an amazing new iPhone 16 Pro with Apple Intelligence and a new line on My Plan. And iPad and Apple Watch Series 10. That's like a 3-for-1. And you can get it on any plan. At Verizon, trade in your old phone for a brand new iPhone 16 Pro, iPad, and Apple Watch. The other guys won't give you that. Visit Verizon.com today. Additional terms apply. Service plan required for Apple Watch and iPad. Up to $2,000 value based on iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch.
The Rock got to use them last year. But the reaction from the WWE fans, absolutely amazing. The fact that he said that, then they do a huge cheer as well. And in the little kind of crowd cheer afterwards, you then get a hug from Cena to Cody as he's joining with the fans, yay! Then the face, the John Cena angry mug, which, a fun little thing. If you go and pause basically the video at any point, pause and look at John Cena's face, doesn't change. Almost like every time he's in shot, he's got this exact same face on, before the exact same one from when he looks over the shoulder. I loved this. I'm perfectly fine for WWE kind of going somewhat corny and whatnot, because I was talking to my friend about this, who's a huge fan of Peacemaker, and I was like, when you watch John Cena in the wrestling, you just realise suddenly just like kind of how corny he is. And he was like, you have seen him as an actor, right? I was like, yeah, but he's way more corny in the wrestling. I was like, pretty corny as an actor. I was like, well, but like when I watch the wrestling, it's like, it's completely different, or it's almost like he can't act. It's a really over-the-top hammy type of thing. And for me, this was exactly that, but I am all here for it. If this was an all like high-level blood feud in AEW, I want this nowhere near. But in WWE, like this kind of thing, I'm absolutely fine with it. It's all right. So he pulls the face, he looks over the shoulder, gets a huge, huge reaction as the crowd knows something that their hero does not. Dick kick. And it's got to be his heel Cena. My immediate reaction is, oh, they're doing it. Instinctive response of they're doing the thing that I wish they'd done all these years ago. So my initial reaction isn't, oh, it's too late. I don't have an initial negative reaction to it. My negative reaction came when I realised that neither John Cena nor The Rock are going to be able to appear on any WWE TV for 2 weeks straight. That's a problem. That's a problem with doing this absolutely huge angle and having nothing to follow it up with for 2 weeks. That is a huge negative. However, in this moment, I'm like, oh, they're doing the thing I wanted to do. So it's immediate like endorphins release. It's like, oh, yes, I want this to happen. This is something I really want to see. But when I wanted to see it most was in a time where really it was just because the character was shit. It wasn't very entertaining for me as a teen entering adulthood. Seeing this kid-centric John Cena, which had been the same character for about 5-6 years with no progression, with nothing. He is this unrelatable cartoon superhero, which kids absolutely love. Like, the reason I wanted him to turn heel, I think at the time, was just that I just wanted the product to be interesting. I wanted to at least have something where I could care. And there were a lot of those parallels drawn between Hulk Hogan. Hogan's character had become stale in WCW. And to keep him on top and relevant, something had to change. And I think there was, within that fan sentiment, there was something. It was like, they felt like, to keep this character interesting, something had to change, because they were never going to get invested in this version of the character. Similar sentiment with Hogan. Difference was, Hogan's merch sales also started to fall, which wasn't the case with Cena. He was always top, by miles. So in WWE's thing, that it's always a huge risk. It's such a huge risk to turn your huge star that it's got all these high merch sales to turn him bad guy. And when I think about it, it wasn't actually that long since the Steve Austin turn completely had such a huge negative effect. This did not work. 2 examples there. One was WCW, Hogan turning heel, massively worked, but his merch sales were dropping. Steve Austin, his merch sales were not dropping, completely backfires. Huge negative effects. So when the question then comes for Cena, the want to do it just isn't there. And there's a glowing alarm of remember Steve Austin. You gotta have a big reason to do it. And unfortunately, that big reason was really only there for the whole thing with the arenas where it'd be 50-50 split. With the Let's Go Cena sucks. The Let's Go Cena were buying so much of his merch that it's too much of a risk. Like, can you guarantee that older demographic would have started buying Cena shirts? Look at his bad guy mug face on here. He's just too corny. He is too corny for the fans who want to support the cool wrestler to get behind even his heel character. It's too much. That said, Hogan managed it. Hogan got the fans who wanted like the cool merch type of stuff. Like, he got them on side, so it can massively change his perception, maybe. But also, in terms of like, was I expecting it? The thought crossed my mind when the Elimination Chamber match was happening, and I'd already said on this show last week, what happens to this character when Cody Rhodes is not the one to accept The Rock? And that question then into my mind was like, oh, it might be whoever wins the Elimination Chamber. But I wasn't thinking about that, purely because when the hug happened in the match, we saw that respect. We saw John Cena specifically. The reason I call this not a coincidence is the same guy specifically has a hug during the Elimination Chamber match with somebody he respects in CM Punk. But he then takes advantage, and to get what he wants, because he knows he has to do this, he then takes advantage of Seth Rollins and chokes out CM Punk. And we essentially see the same character beat here. We saw it set up. You were specifically told he's perfectly happy to stab the people in the back that he respects to get this. He needs it too badly. Then when he hugs Cody, he does the exact same thing. That's what I liked it. The character-wise set it up. Absolutely fine. Then there's the huge beating afterwards. Just to lay in the fact this is definitely a heel turn. There's no kind of thing of, oh, he seems like he's turned heel. Using Cody's Rolex to strike Rhodes over and over, bloodying him up to really sell the angle, which then to me explained why there was no blood in Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn. Before finally laying the mic into him, Rocky whipped Cody with the belt for the second year in a row, whilst Travis Scott lit Sage, which was the PG way that Pat talked about it. So, yes, Travis Scott. He was there the whole time, by the way. Just there, got to lay into him. If you're wondering, like, why has he got any relation there at all? He is doing the song for this year's WrestleMania. So is that link there? And I guess WWE have been leaning into celebrities just existing around this star to make them feel like bigger deals. Like, the amount of musicians that were in Atlanta. Like, that was too many. That was too many musicians. The whole scene was there. But they really gave this segment time to just let the beating set in, and then out on the ramp it's the three bad guys just walking away. I say three. I doubt Travis Scott's gonna have any real involvement in this. You're not gonna get a segment with him getting crossroads by Cody or anything. He was just there for the big thing, for the hype. If he's there, then algorithmically or whatever, more people are going to see it, because those kind of places that report on musicians and a bit more on the gossip and whatnot, they'd be like, oh, Travis Scott gave vicious beating to this guy. Or you can clickbait it a lot more to seem like it's an actual beating or whatever. Like, you can get a lot more engagement with it. You'll get a lot more eyeballs on it with him just existing there, so I know why he's there. Even if narratively, I have no idea why he's there. In my mind, I excused it by going, Rock's rich, Hollywood and connections. Yep. Because he comes up with Rocky. So I'm immediately trying to make connections with Rocky. He's doing the song for the WrestleMania. There's the rich person links, and I've got no other link in my mind. But yeah, that was the main event angle. I genuinely liked it, and I know there'll be a lot of negativity. There's a lot of things. Oh, it's just too late. But I think because it's his retirement year, for me, this immediately screams that you're not just going to be rattling through some nice ideas. This screams, the entire year is going to have an actual story as well, rather than it just being a nice thing where he'll turn up and have a respectful match, and then it's almost like your New Japan Pro Wrestling, I want to wrestle you for respect reasons every single pay-per-view. This is a full story, which I'm assuming is going to finish at the end of the year. So they've got a full storyline, and I've done the one thing to get you super invested that you thought you would never get to see. So I'm all fine with it. Even if my personal reasons for him turning heel no longer exist, I still get to enjoy this final year of his. For me, this time distance from when I actually want it isn't really that big a factor. It's fine. It makes this specific story interesting, and that's really all that matters to me. I'm not really comparing it to I would have been better if he did it in da-da-da. It's like, would it though? The writing was still shit. I don't think it would have mattered. I'm not entirely sure it would have mattered. We saw what happened to the product. We saw what happened during that first era of Roman Reigns, the big dog era. We saw what happened there. I don't think a heel turn for John Cena really was going to fix anything when you got the same guy writing it. But anyway, so that was my opinion on all that stuff. In terms of the rest of the show, I'm kind of split on it. So there's some parts that I really like, and there were other parts which I just kind of didn't get much out of. I honestly didn't get much out of Kevin Owens versus Sami Zayn. Because they gave it specifically the unsanctioned match, That means, in my mind, it cannot be a walk and ball and a plunder. Unfortunately, that's exactly what it was. It was a walk and ball, it was a plunder, it ended in the character note because the entire point of it is actually to bring out Randy Orton. It worked effectively in terms of making Kevin Owens this kind of just feared, violent guy who's willing to not just end a friendship with his former best friend, but to actually try and end his career, to really give him that boost of momentum. But the entire point is to bring back Randy Orton. But that's why they brought in the punt. That's going to be your end point. Because the RKO, it's not quite right for the level of violence he has given. It's going to have to be a punt type of situation, kick his head off type of thing, don't see him for a while, really make the punt feel like this huge dangerous thing as well. But the Women's Chamber had a mix of stuff, which I really liked, and a mix of stuff where I'm like, thought absolutely nothing of the women's special tag, almost like what's the point of it? And then you've already talked about the men's Elimination Chamber. So let's talk about the women's Elimination Chamber. Fun fact, this was Liv Morgan's 6th Elimination Chamber. That just feels wrong. It's like, gosh, how has she been in 6 already? Just my mind has been like, that can't be right. But it was her and Naomi were the two that started off. Bianca Belair, Alexa Bliss, Roxanne Perez and Bayley. The answer is yes, I forgot about my Amazon Echo again and I had to pause and I had to edit it out. It's speaking to me. One of these days. I joked last week that I'm going to condition myself to not do it again, and then I do it again. But Naomi didn't last long as Jade Cargill's music hit immediately before they could close the cage, storming on in, dressed in full black as commentary hit hard that she was going for Liv. So yeah, obviously she attacked Naomi instead. Huge reactions for the attack, especially for the big boot into the plexiglass. But the biggest came when Naomi tried to crawl away and got the chamber door slid into her face. Worked like fire. All with Bianca stuck in her pod so she can't do anything about it, and no sympathy from the Canadians. Bianca was first out of her pod, and they just booed when she went to check on Naomi instead of doing a wrestle. They had just been singing "Hey, hey, hey, goodbye" and chanting "You deserve it" to Naomi, because they followed the storyline. They're investors. Like, oh, so you're the one that attacked Jade Cargill. It's not some form of weird mystery about why she attacked. This makes all the sense in the word. Naomi, you be a baddie. Boo. Was that the Canadians immediately put every single dot together. It's like, okay, cool, yeah. Boo. You're the bad guy who attacked her. Yeah, that makes sense. You're fully behind Jade Cargill. My fear, in terms of, costume design, I talked about with Cody not being able to trick me earlier. Jade Cargill, she also came out in all black. It wasn't just Cody. And that's normally the code. You got Bianca and Naomi both in bright white colours. Then you've got Jade Cargill in the black kind of thing. Like, costume design-wise, you are telling me, and it's meant to be this, oh my god, why is she attacking her? Canadians immediately put it together. If you are planning to do Jade Cargill as the violent heel, which she is amazing at doing, you can still have her act that way, but Naomi can't be the goody person really within this. She has to kind of deserve it. And maybe you do write it that way. You have her show her true colours a little bit or something. And I'm personally not against, especially given the reaction this got, especially the way it was delivered. If you can in some or any way carry the momentum from this to WrestleMania, I feel like you can easily get it on the card, no problem whatsoever. Roxanne Perez was out next. Her and Bianca were great together. Lots of head scissors and fancy floating overs. The atmosphere somewhat hindered by turn the lights off chants. Like, oh, come on. That's still happening. But all was fixed in time for Bayley to bash Perez into a pod. This is where the flow kicked up a little with Role Model introducing a bit of much needed oomph. Last was Bliss. The change in the look of a trance-like Bliss. Because she's not in a trance, as there's no actual spooky spook. One lad could be heard trying to start a "This is awesome" and essentially got told to shut the fuck up. It's like, oh, I love you Canadians. Oh, Canada, you are a wonderful nation. The lasses tried their innovation in this stage with them all out. Plenty of, ooh, that was nice, like Bayley's dive to 2 over the bottom rope. Roxanne's spin around in the middle. But I'd be lying if I said there was much momentum or animosity. Like, we're seeing technically good stuff, but I'm not really invested in any of these characters. They won me over, however, when it gets to Liv and Bianca at the end. But in this period, I'm just watching stuff happen. Perez and Bayley had a full-on wrestle in the ring before Liv flashed in to hit Oblivion out of nowhere onto a Bayley who had just flipped her foe to the ringside mats. Belair and Morgan on top of the pod. A incredible hair whip whilst Liv was stuck up there with her. It's the loudest echo they played over and over again, and you could just see just the line across Liv's stomach, which they really made sure to show on the camera. Then a big crossbody off the pod as Bianca got another loud reaction. So, she's getting to do really big spots. She's going to getting to get these huge reactions. As I'm watching that, I'm like, you're giving her those moments for a reason. Pop Rocks fought off by Bianca right into a code breaker and twisted Bliss for Roxanne's elimination. Belair did her best to fend off the blondes, but there were two of them! Oh no! A great tiny detail with Bliss's elimination. Bianca failed a roll-up on Liv, momentum pushed into a Bliss sister Abigail, but blonde number 1 rolled up blonde number 2, was grabbing onto Bianca's hair. Yes, Bianca completely out of it, and so Liv just grabbed onto her hair and just held onto it like it was a rope. Like, I genuinely really liked that. And it was the fact that they didn't focus on it until the second replay showed the camera angle. That's when commentary started talking about it. It wasn't like a thing happened and they had like Vince screaming down the microphone, like, mention it, mention the hair, and then Michael Cole screaming down the microphone, like, did you see her hold her hair? Oh my god, like, that era was gone, thank god. Like, commentary used to be horrific. Now, a lot more natural. They don't react to it until they see it on the replay. Worked really well. And then, arguably, the best flow of the match when it was just Bianca and Liv. Here, they finally won me over. I was watching, like, I didn't hate the match beforehand, but I was also just watching stuff. Like, I wasn't really invested, as I was saying. However, here, they did really well at teasing that Liv was going to win. They did a really good job. Even though I'd said earlier, there's got to be a reason they were giving Bianca all these huge, big pop moments. It wasn't like the men's one where you knew why the transphobe was doing it. Like, the transphobe was doing these big spots because he said, outside of the match, he wants to do some big spots. And it doesn't really feed into the narrative to try to tell for anything other than he's a big show-off. And that's kind of just what it led into there. In this match, Bianca's given it for a reason. We've got to make sure the crowd's behind us. Let's give her like a big dive or something to get them to do a big cheer for her earlier. The ante upped a tad and the crowd responded in kind. The Canadians loved this bit. Hair pull into the cage and back again looked great. If it wasn't for the constant camera cuts, like, I still hate this thing. We still do it every now and then. But we're doing a fast-paced kind of motion-y thing. So to sell the chaotic motion of it, we will cut. Like, please don't. It's really not needed. Bianca's spear also looks amazing, but the swings into the plexiglass got the biggest reaction of all. In the end, a constant flow of teasing, Morgan successfully setting up for the Oblivion, only for Bianca to counter each and every time. A genuine great, 30-second flow. Afterwards, Bianca on the entranceway was met by the Women's World Champion Rhea Ripley before Io walked on up and we got our trio. But as you're just watching this, you're like, yes, of course. Io's going to be losing, but they're setting up the match to Monday Night Raw, so that's all fine. That's all absolutely fine. But I wrote in my notes, and I'm happy to be Nostradamus in this moment. That said, if they wanted to do a triple threat, nom 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 nom. So we'll see if the final part is Nostradamus or Nomstradamus. Nom nom nom. I can't end my review on that pun. Fortunately, I've got another match to talk about, so I don't have to end it on that. I don't have to end it on Nomstradamus. So let's talk about the women's special tag that was very much nothing. Tiffany Stratton and Trish Stratus, Canadian, versus Nia Jax and Candice LeRae, Canada. Do you remember Trish Stratus? Well, we're not risking Charlotte getting injured before Mania again, and we're not just going to run Stratton versus Jax again. So here's Trish Stratus, your favourite Canadian, to make this match appeasable. And appeasable is exactly how I describe this match. Like, Stratus got cheers for every single little thing she did, which was a nice distraction from the still happening Nia and Tiffy storyline. And that's not me complaining that's gone on for a while. That's me basically complaining that the momentum of the feud feels like, oh, this is still happening, is it? Nia realised that just mentioning the USA is guaranteed heat right now. So tonight she was the most patriotic woman on the show that never has any politics on it at all. They don't touch it. Remember that as you're watching somebody purposely get nation heat. Back to Canada. Trish, at nearly 50, is still able to bump like a boss. Do yoga, kids. This is the message. She was the one to soak up all the villains' slow down. Eventually started to walk and get the crowd to start chanting for Stratton for like 30 seconds. After that, they were right back into Canada. Canada. Not really chanting for any of them, but just clapping for the tag was a lot more effective. Canada likes to clap. Like, do you want to clap? And the crowd were like, yeah, let's clap. She got to run hot fire and got the crowd making some noise again. But then Candice cut off the prettiest moonsault ever and led slow back down. My other note is that Nia took more bumps than I was expecting. 2 suplexes from Stratton and even a top rope Stratusfaction from Trish. The pin was broken up by a line salt from Candice, going awry with Trish then took care of LeRae, and the still down from the faction Jax was out on her back for the prettiest moonsault ever. Could have happened on SmackDown. It didn't need to. It didn't need to be on this show. It's absolutely fine. I mean, that's my review of Elimination Chamber. A show with an absolutely huge moment. And on Monday Night Raw, they replayed the John Cena heel turn over and over, and rightly they should. This is like a huge, huge moment they're trying to sell as one of the biggest shifts in WWE history. Just a moment which would go down in infamy. And I reckon for some fans it will. This will be their huge moment which completely caught them off guard. Obviously immediately comparing it to an NWO thing because he's that long-serving goody guy who then comes back and does this huge heel turn. Like, it's going to have a lot of comparisons comparisons to NWO stuff. I feel like angle-wise, it's going to be nothing like it. They're going for the corporate champion type of thing. But it is a huge angle that generated all this momentum and completely changed the road to WrestleMania. Because you very much could have done retirement tour. This is still a big match. It's essentially John Cena passing the torch to Cody. Like, all the notes are still there for this to already be fine. But this is the kind of thing that just adds just a huge thing and momentum and fire to the entirety of John Cena's final year. This isn't going to just be for the road to WrestleMania. Or at least, like, I hope not. I'm perfectly happy to see, like, gradually John Cena get that turn back. But then we're hit by the reality of the situation. Because, like, in my heart, John Cena does this turn, and even if it's not this week, next week we get this huge thing. This huge promo. We get to see the new version of John Cena or something. We really immediately keep firing on with it. Unfortunately, when I say, oh, it would be quite nice to see over the course of the year John Cena have this angle, unfortunately, I got one question. When? Like, when does this happen when he's not available for much TV? How do you do that with sporadic appearances? Like, how does that happen? When does that happen? You haven't really got that much TV time to really sell me on it. In case in point for here, WrestleMania is like 40-something days away, and neither John Cena nor The Rock are going to be on the first two shows. So immediately, before they appear on anything, we're getting close to like 30-something days left, and they won't have appeared on a single show. For me, that's a bit of a momentum problem. The angle was big enough to have all of this fire going into it, so it's not too big of an issue. But the fact that last year we were able to have, even if Roman Reigns wasn't there or The Rock wasn't there, you had everybody else in the bloodline keeping it going. You had Cody to fight through his adversity with all the memes and everything. He was able to do all that. This year, who is there though? When they're not there, Cody's got to act hurt, which he can do for this first week. First week, easy to get by. Styles being injured, Styles getting beaten up. Next week he comes out and he gets to do that in front of a crowd. But then there isn't that immediate reaction. You've got to wait another week for the response from the other side, which is a shame. It's a shame. We'll see. I think they're going to be absolutely fine. It's not that big an issue. It's just in terms of like the level of investment I could have. I know it's somewhat deterred a little bit just by not having it there to be able to bounce off of. Like, they're not going to be there, and I doubt they're going to be there for like all of the shows afterwards as well. It'd just be nice, if we actually had them to build the story. But instead, you got to kind of dance around it a bit. But in terms of stories that are able to build, so if that's a bit of a negative, the positive is the rest of the card desperately just needs something. It needs some kind of thing. Like, we know now we're going to be getting Kevin Owens and Randy Orton, even though it's not massively confirmed. And we've got the Charlotte Flair versus Tiffany Stratton, which doesn't have massive momentum because the fans aren't massively into Charlotte really at all. Unlike what we're getting on the Raw side of the women's division, where we've got our built stars who are incredibly over. Like, Rhea Ripley is still incredibly over, in spite of her and the women's division being given so little heat to play with in this Netflix era. She won the title and has been basically doing shit all since, just dancing about a bit. She had the match with Nia Jax, which again wasn't that massive heat behind it really. Yet she still stays this incredibly over person. The reaction she got here was she got such a huge shout. Like, my reaction to Rhea Ripley's entrance on this Raw was that she got such a huge cheer. Just like, she gets the high pitched screams normally reserved for your Roman Reigns oily boys, and Rhea Ripley's getting those high pitched screams. That's how incredibly over she is. So anyway, let's jump on over to Buffalo, New York, live on Netflix for Monday Night Raw, and our new Women's World Champion.
Rhea looking for a riptide from way up top. Io Sky counter into a Hurricane Rana.
Thought she was going to call her shot like Babe Ruth.
Io Sky top rope. Over the moonsault connects. Sky cover. Hooks the leg. Io Sky is the world champion.
So how do we get a WrestleMania triple threat from here? A complete surprise win for Io Sky. I mentioned it on the Saturdays. It would be nice, wouldn't it? But part of me mentioning it is I didn't expect it to happen. For me, Rhea Ripley versus Bianca Belair is a big match, and that's the women's match of the generation that they 100% should do at WrestleMania. But you could use this one to set up that match next year. I'm floating it out there. But for me, that is a big enough singles match. Problem is, you've done shit all with Bianca for the entire year, basically. It was one tag team with Jade Cargill, then another tag team with Naomi. Now he's spinning off Naomi versus Jade Cargill, so you can put Bianca into the singles division again, which means that she's not really got any momentum. You can build Bianca up over the next course of this year, then you can do the match, which should be the match of the division, of this era. I'm saying that almost as a setup of, you're going to do something else, aren't you? These are your two of this generation, of this era. They should be the singles match of WrestleMania, but I'm expecting you to do some form of thing, do something else. But as Ripley and Io both came out, I realised at the start of the bell, there was a full 25 minutes left, and that is after the entrances. entrances. I'm making a note of this to kind of reflect my review from last week. The entrances started at 25 minutes, but at the time of just so much jumping about and time wasting and focus pulling away, there was only like 15 minutes left. Here, they focus on the entrances, no jumping about everywhere. Like no other segments, like, oh shit, that they're actually staying focused for this. And there's 25 minutes left. A completely different reaction from me. It's exactly what I meant last week. All of the attention on the match. So of course I'm able to just get into it right from the start of the bell. I've not had my attention pulled elsewhere to a different segment or promo or anything. Also, it's Io Bloody Shirai versus Rhea Bloody Ripley. Like, just give them time and just let them go. And I'm going to be okay with it. No one bumps like Io. A lovely inside out after a big Aussie boot. Then Rhea is also more than happy just to spike herself on the top of her noggin. Like, two amazing characters at doing this. The signatures were not working and countered. Riptide into an awesome DDT, then followed up with an insane elbow in tribute. I think she also did the Asuka lock as well. Just the big boot corner thing, whatever it's called by Dakota. She's got friends. She's got all this stuff, and that was somewhat flowing off of... Rhea Ripley did a interview after this match talking about how, since the whole thing with the Judgment Day, she's kind of alone. She kind of doesn't have those people holding her up, and she's somewhat paranoid, and that was her character explanation for how she reacted to what Bianca does during this match. But I don't mind that, especially with her story with Io, because Io's got all those people holding her up. Moonsault stopped before one grand German pulled Sky down with an oomph. 7 minutes left on the show, and proof this match was working was just a complete lack of a clear finish or swing. Like, at this point, I had no idea where it was going. Sunset flip powerbomb into the barricade looked painful, but was the perfect setup to give us a moonsault to the back near fall. Expertly using us, just expecting Rhea to retain to their advantage. They gave that next gear that most WWE telly matches aren't afforded. Sky trying to kick up a notch and Ripley powering her down. However, WWE is still gonna WWE. Even though they start to kick up into that next gear, they only got a little flow with it. We get a Riptide onto the announce table. Io is then clawing to get back up and get in there. And Bianca is sat in her announce desk chair just clapping and calling for Io to get in. And that's what angers Rhea Ripley. Rhea fell out with Bianca, shoving each other at ringside in a shouting match. Nice to see the referee just not disqualify and throw the match out. That would have been a really lame way to get to a triple threat. Ripley shouted to Bianca, "I'll see you at WrestleMania," before going to Riptide Shirai stood on Brett's rope. Hurricane Rana reversal over the moonsault, and Io Sky shocked everybody by winning the Women's World Championship 47 nights before WrestleMania, completely shaking up this entire course as well. I thought this was a excellently executed angle. Mostly because it's absolutely screaming, let's give Rhea a much stronger competitor before getting to the actual singles match, the thing for our actual focus with Bianca Belair. And Bianca Belair's there just to keep that angle going, so I'm not expecting any form of interference. I appreciated Rhea Ripley's character explanation. It definitely needed it, because otherwise it's kind of like, but why did he get that distracted by something? You often think that so often with WWE babyfaces. That it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be. But you still get stuff like this where they just feel a bit stupid. Like, just stay focused on the competition. But unfortunately, they just got this habit of the actual story happens when you stop the match, you tell the actual story, then you get back to this wrestling thing we've got to do to finish it off. It happens on Raw all the time. It happens so routinely. That said, when it comes to WrestleMania and I get to watch these three have a triple threat, I am not complaining. Give them the time to let this flow. Speaking of WrestleMania, we got another setup with CM Punk and Seth Rollins. Important note just to say from at this point, next week's Monday Night Raw is going to be from Madison Square Garden, and this match did a lot just to add a bunch of matches. Not that made Buffalo happy when they found out they weren't getting the matches, because Madison Square Garden is next week, so obviously they're getting the bigger stuff. Angry Punkerton arrived in his car and stormed through Gorilla to open the show. Adam Pearce in kayfabe must have been shitting himself. It's just weird, they're like, meant to be opening the show, he's not here. Oh my god, he's not here. Don't think about it, it's cool that he arrives in his car and storms on in. Full-on venting on the announce desk, giving us that different angle. He's looking down into the camera, so it's almost like he's speaking down to The Rock, to John Cena, to Seth Rollins as he's cutting his promos on them. Taking the Raw logo off of the microphone, so it's almost like the pipe bomb type of thing. Like, this is no longer a branded thing. This is me, and I'm on the loose, and I get to say the word shit twice. Like, oh. Addressing his enemies like he's Eddie Kingston, calling Dwayne a bold fraud, Mr. Midlife Crisis, telling John Cena we can all see through him, then gives one bullshit to each of the lads, before focusing up on little brother Seth Rollins. Burn it down, Seth out in his least flamboyant outfit in years. We didn't get much time before Punk had charged right up the ramp and ignited the brawl. Local wrestler security out and failing to keep the two apart. Adam Pearce and the Suits front of camera holding them back, and the crowd popped so loud for each and every drum. Like, this is awesome was so loud by the end. Separated by the announce desk to finally be able to keep them apart. It was your everyday heated WWE big hot brawl, but just listen to the crowd to confirm how well this worked. For me, this was a really good example as to why you do these brawls. Yeah, they do too many, and there's a lot of hot brawls that just kind of are. This was not one of them. This was one that definitely deserved the heat. My foreign ass got one final extra charge into the crowd, but in the end it was Punk loudly getting his name chanted as Seth was escorted away. A full hour later, we got a cut backstage with PS and security doing their best in the pull apart brawl too. There's still going on backstage a full hour later, which acted as the ad break lead-in, returning with PS arguing with Rollins and announcing Punk versus Rollins in a steel cage next week at the Madison Square Garden Raw. Then we move on to the World Tag Team Championship, War Raiders versus American Made. There's something about WWE production that just makes me laugh, where during the entrances everything feels so amped and high level, then the bell rings and there's a sound whiplash to the crowd that is so quiet and mild. And it happens every show. Just listen out for it for when the music goes down and you're getting the bell rung. Listen to the crowd's reaction. Consistently both a white hot ticket and a grand atmosphere for a nap. And I especially felt it when I kept an eye out for it when I watched this week's AEW. And they're so excited and amped for the matches. It's that crowd that is amped for to see that sort of thing. Then you watch a WWE show and he gets to one of the mid-card matches and it's just kind of meh. The bell rings, is like, oh, we'll get through this all together, guys. Type of atmosphere. The match itself, Ivar took one mighty great ad break bump, kicked off of Brett's rope and took a big boy tumble to the outside, hitting no branches on his way down. Ivar was the star of this show, to be frank. The lad just consistently got reactions out of the crowd as he jumped and bumped all over the place. Then the two teams had a match that got the crowd popping loud. Ivar moonsault missed, landing on his tum-tum and set up perfectly to have Julius Creed show how to properly nail a shooting star. Bruce's ball was a no-go. Julius to the outside for an awesome low crossbody splash right into the ring LED board. So Buffalo may have been wild at the start, but they were loud and on their feet for the 3 count. War Raiders retaining, setting up the story to do with American Made and Chad Gable coming back from his luchador stuff, which takes me to the other notes. Let's not start with Chad, actually. In the other notes, let's just bash through. World Heavyweight Champion Gunter. Just how far down the pecking order is this in terms of the rankings of the matches at this point? He got to beat up Otis this week, just somewhat repeating the segment after last week, just not as well. Beating up Tozawa last week, and then this one doing it with Otis. Just winning against nothing competitors to give an excuse for Jay to run out. Like, I watched this, I'm like, you're just out of ideas. And Jay's going to get a match against A-Town Down Under, and we're going to do the inverse of this, but it just feels like they've got nothing. They did the character building stuff to the Saturday Night's main event thing. They've reiterated it, and it's just kind of just been this ever since, and I think it's going to be this for the entire run. Like, as much as I'm applauding them doing something to just re-energise and revitalise, just give this huge boost to lots of different areas. I say lots of different areas. I mean, 2. John Cena turning heel, Io Sky winning the championship. Just great WrestleMania road switches. This has got nothing. It's just repeating the same stuff each week at this point. The crowds keep popping, but like this feud is going nowhere fast. The Women's Intercontinental Championship between Lyra Valkyria and Ivy Nile, with the latter getting her entrance during the ad break, when they've been building this up for like 6 weeks. It finally gets to it, and her entrance is a Netflix exclusive. Like, ugh. New York a little happier to woo with the Irish than other cities. Nile got quiet, kind boos, whilst like I'd be lying if I said that Buffalo were invested in like Lyra massively either, because of course they're not. She won the title and then was given nothing for a whole month. Like, she's genuinely good, though. By the end, having the crowd with them and popping for the Nightwing finish. Her being the first champion of a workhorse title was the right call for me. Just, remember to give her something to do, which they just didn't for the first month. Speaking of champions, Bron Breakker and Finn Balor had a quick jabber. His thing with AJ Styles, where it was like so cool that AJ just caught the ripped shirt, like, was the coolest thing ever. And since then, we've had nothing. Sami Zayn carrying Cross, I don't know if it's happening because they may have changed their mind and done this angle instead. So they're maybe switching to Finn Balor. I would have liked, another triple threat, not against it, but I don't know if we're doing AJ versus Cross now, whatever. The champion was out in the crowd for his Jackie interview, with the Irishman chatting shit in the ring, but then running all the way through the crowd to the ring. I say running, he's more like power walked. Carlito with the worst attempted jump in WWE history. Dom not much better, as Breakker easily got to the ring. Finn tried his best, but Bron got the best of him again, only escaping because of Dom dragging him away. AJ Styles had a backstage interview with hair-straightened Karrion Kross. Don't know how I feel about hair-straightened Karrion Kross. Thematically, he fits with AJ. Two Republicans with long straightened hair. Like, thematically they fit. They are two pieces which should fit together absolutely fine. But this whole segment was to set up AJ versus the transphobe next week on the Madison Square Garden show. We continued the Penta and Kaiser light simmer with Rey Fenix now free for purchase. We can take this feud home. By home, I mean in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal on SmackDown before WrestleMania. Turns out Chad Gable learned a lucha from a foreign elder stereotype who appeared to just accept 500 bucks for a mask. I don't know what the mask is going to be. I don't know if we're getting America Chad or whatever. I would love the idea that he's just been hustled and the guy just knows Dom. It's like, well, yeah, of course he's some dumb American guy. Of course he's going to know nothing about foreign cultures. Let's just rip him off. Ray and Dragon Lee, remember him, got to chinwag to camera and announced a tornado tag with The New Day. And that's the end of the notes. There were title matches, there were big finish at the end of the show as well, a really heated brawl. It's the same issue with Monday Night Raw. It has, throughout the show, it has things I like, but it always overstays its welcome. I'm always done with the show way before it finishes, and I kind of bash through or take a huge break and then come back for the final hour. Like, in the past, I've even split these Raw shows across 2 different days. But this one, it had its bigger angles, and it did have that WrestleMania kind of momentum, even though the biggest angle was only replayed on the show. But again, in terms of like the sheer number of times I replayed that huge angle, this was another show to not watch live, which I didn't. I made good use of that skip button. good use. I say skip button. I'm watching on Netflix on a PC, so it's a click now. It's literal. I can just see where it is and just go straight to it. But yeah, it feels like the show's perfectly fine, but it left me on a really good note with the Io Sky stuff. And I was genuinely enjoying the match, and part of me's like, it's a shame they did that, but they are telling me that I'm going to get this in some form at WrestleMania, so I can't be too annoyed if this is a setup angle to do that. But that is the end of the review for this week. This week for WWE, got through the end of February, did not mention Black History Month once. The thing that grabbed actual headlines was John Cena doing his huge heel turn, which I honestly did not mind. Absolutely did not mind. So I was in the Social Suplex WWE live spoiler chat whilst this was happening. And yeah, there were people being like, going to be 12, it's too late, it's 12 years too late. It's not that big a deal. It would have been a big deal back then, but it's not now. I've always the inverse opinion. I think this really works for this story, and it makes his final year just have an actual story arc rather than be something just nice. But also, the writing was shit all over the place in that era 12 years ago. I don't honestly think this would have been good. I don't honestly think this would have changed anything. Because it still would have been written by the same guy who was writing all the other bad stuff. If anything, I'm more happy to see it now in more competent hands. But yeah, it's nice to see the twists and things coming. They're competent, yes, but they're sometimes a bit boring. You don't need to watch them. This felt like the first one, where across the show was like more than one thing. The hot ball at the start, the Io Sky win. There were lots of things going on. So anyway, I'll be back this time next week for what could be a very standard show. Because again, John Cena nor The Rock are going to be there, but it's a big Madison Square Garden show. We have got CM Punk versus Seth Rollins in a steel cage, but I assume will be a main event, and I assume will be the return of Roman Reigns to set up that triple threat as well. It's WrestleMania full of triple threats, if I get my intercontinental wish. And before I know, we are going to get our straightened, long-haired Republican showdown. Maybe that is going to happen. But for now, I dream in a WrestleMania full of triple threats. That's beautiful. So anyway, I'll be back this time next week to talk about the Madison Square Garden show and the SmackDown that airs the night that this show comes out. Please do check out the other shows here on the Social Suplex Podcast Network. It means a lot. Any form of support, any form of 5-star reviews or anything, it means a lot to all of us. Thank you for any form of liking, subscribing, reviewing, whatever. Always appreciated. Never take it for granted. With that, bid you adieu. Adios.